One thing I love that you said earlier was talking about the function. So the function there is so key for the reader. And you were saying that, man, what I'm realizing when I'm translating is that Jesus' words should speak for themselves. They should hammer us based off the function. You know what I'm saying? They should bring us to our knees. Just reading his words. But what happens a lot of times is the function is kind of lost, and translation was just translated, and we got words, and we're kind of getting the meaning of it, but we're not really getting what Jesus is pounding at, what he's getting at. It's Greek in English clothing. So maybe we could dive off. That's
Greek and English clothing is, that they're different languages, but if you're not careful, you can take one language and put different clothing on it. Just like we do Christoplatonism, right? We talk about that a lot. We have 50 bazillion resources on worldview, right? And so, we talk about that you can have a certain worldview that's dressed up in different ways, and it seems like one thing, but something else is happening, right? Going back to what's the impact that something's having on you.
That's it.
Is the question is, for example, how does Greek add extra emphasis to something? Now, linguists are going to be pretty, they don't like to use the word emphasis because sometimes it's this and this, but normal speakers would call it emphasis, right? They would use prominence or extra prominence or something like that.
Got it. That's their proper terms. But for us, it's emphasis.
We say emphasis. So the question is, if you want to put some umph on something, how do you do it? Greek does it differently than English does.
Like one thing I was saying to you is that some people could know Tim Miller and know that you're intense and passionate about the Lord, and they're reading your translation, they're like, oh, well, Tim's kind of going heavy on the intensity because he's Tim, whenever really there is emphasis that comes from the word, and you're trying to include that in, and that's actually kind of a new thing to translation processes.
Here would be an example, right? Where Jesus is saying, watch out for false prophets. You'll know them by their fruit, right? Every tree that does not produce good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire, right? So when he says that, in the Greek text, it's actually emphasizing into the fire. So Jesus is putting a little more umph to it, right? And so
how do you know that? That's from
because just to let people into that. If you study diesels, you know the way diesels work.
So in the Greek and the way it functions, it's saying this is emphasized.
It's saying this is being emphasized right here.
So then in the function of in English, you've got to somehow bring.
So the question is
emphasis in.
Right. The question is. So basically, without going into a whole lesson, Greek is one of the ways that it highlights ideas or adds prominence to them or adds emphasis is based on word order, right? And so English can do that, but Greek has it's a lot more robust in its ability to do that, right?
And English is more wordy, so you're going to get more adjectives or whatever to bring.
In English, if you're going to start adding emphasis to things, you're going to start using adverbs. You're going to use italics, right? And see, that's where the mismatch comes in, whereas we're using italics to signal what Greek does in English close, when in English, italics are used to emphasize, or to signal to the reader that something's being emphasized, right?
Absolutely.
You can use something called a cleft construction, or a WH construction, right? You can use rhetorical questions. These are all different devices that we use to bring some extra umph to something, right? And can you imagine reading the Sermon on the Mount or the Book of Romans without knowing where he's putting the umph?
You were wanting to give an example on the emphasis side, like you were talking about the hell piece, or what was it? The fire.
Into the fire, right? And so Jesus, in that little section there, in Greek, the word is being into the fire is got some umph to it, right? Now the way languages flow, they're usually always going to put the most important information at the end. It's called the principle of end weight, or the principle of natural information flow, right?
Got it.
So when you start tweaking with that a little bit, there's a reason behind it. And so Greek, the way it does it is, a lot of times it will preposition the verb. But not just prepositioning the verb, but it has to be the primary new information that's being introduced that's repositioned.
Got it.
So that's in this situation.
So you feel it.
In this situation, that's what's happening. English, if I can do that in some instances, but if I do it too much, nobody's going to feel the impact that the Greek speaker is actually feeling in the moment.
Got it.
And so, for example, I can say, they will be cut down, and into the fire they will be thrown.
Which is the Yoda-ism.
That's the Yoda-ism, right? And so if I'm going to say, no, English is going to put that umph in it by doing what Greek does. It's going to sound like this. Every tree that does not bear fruit will be cut down, and into the fire it will be thrown.
Totally.
See what I'm saying? And so you laugh, right?
Yeah.
But that's
like what the world.
What's happening is a lot of times you're trying to hold on to that form when actually, if Jesus was speaking in English, here's how we do it. It'd be a sermon. Every tree that does not produce fruit will be cut down, yes, and thrown into the fire.
Wow.
Right? Because you put some fire on the end of it.
Yeah.
And because English adds emphasis by intonation.
Yeah.
And so it's already the most.
That's how you feel the emphatic piece.
It's already the most important information. And so he'll be thrown into the fire. But you want to know what Jesus, like, he doesn't want people to go there.
Yeah.
And he's intense about it. And so he ends up with every tree that does not produce fruit is going to be cut down, right? And that word cut down, it's actually a verbal little bit. It's called the default or the dominant focal element, the verb there.
Got it.
So that's where you, in English, put a comma there, so that there's
they
a little.
fill the pause in the hit.
So they fill the pause of the verb there. They fill the weight of the verb. They'll be cut down, and then you can put a little yes on there because English, one of the ways.
So you're trying to get the function, and
you're trying to bring in the function, right? Yes. Or you don't even have to put that yes there, but you could because the weight of that emphasis is falling on the verb there.
Got it.
And thrown into the fire, and into the fire is clearly emphatic. So you say, will be cut down. Boom. You get a little yes in there. Yes. And thrown where? Into the fire.
Wow.
And you're like, whoa. Like, so your hope there is that by entering into that, like, that transference there, that what it's doing there is that you're reading the Bible, and the Bible is like, it's hitting you.
Yes.
And you're and you know, when I'd read the Bible, I'd fall asleep.
Yeah. People get bored.
You kind of get bored.
Yep.
Because when you're like, man, he's like into the fire.
You start to feel Jesus and who he is.
Right. You start
the personality.
The personality comes out.
Personalities.
The personality comes out. Right. Totally.
You know, we're really wanting people to walk away feeling the hit of the word and really being drawn to the right things, or being, not falling asleep, but actually being engaged in the story and what's happening there.
Right.
And getting to know the Lord, actually feeling the intensity of the sobriety of what we're walking towards, the day of the Lord.
Right.
And like, I think like all those things, like the emphasis and the function and all those things are super huge in context, even with the time we're living in and the things that are happening around the word and the different things in the body of Christ, just to try to bring some clarity to some of those things.